So for the longest part, I've actually tried to focus more on other stuff, not relating to football news. Um, yeah, it's actually been a while since I've actually reacted to just news in general in terms of football. Most of the stuff which I've been covering of late has been in connection to key reactions and stuff like that. So I just thought I'll just pivot back to the other stuff I used to cover. Now, I didn't actually plan on starting this off in the form of a monologue, but I just feel like I just have to put this out in order to build certain context to where I'm actually going with this. This is still a video or a reaction to Brazil, the national team Brazil, and obviously Neymar as well. But before I get into that, um, I think in general it's just necessary to take a look at this World Cup and actually look at what's happening right now. There is a lot that's taking place. Um, Obviously regarding FIFA and also the political stuff too. I try as much as possible not to make this into a political video, not to get into. Or I try as much as possible not to get into politics on this platform, mainly because it has to do with football. But sometimes, it's just the two sides sort of like coincide sometimes to create a disaster. And in this case, we see it being put in place. Where obviously you've got the US and the conflict as well, which are happening right now. Then you've got FIFA, who are stuck in the middle of everything. And obviously, there's the rumor about a certain country withdrawing from the World Cup too. And obviously, you've got Nigeria as well. And the Nigerians also trying to get into this World Cup too. I guess what I'm trying to say is that these are uncertain times, especially when it comes to global football. Uh, which leads me on to this issue with Brazil. I think the best example of changing landscapes and a shift of explaining the shift with regards to what used to be and what is now could be Brazil. I mean, for the longest time, before the 2014 World Cup, Brazil were the giants of football. Like, they were the superpower of football. When you talk about football in general, especially when it comes to World Cup and the types of talents that they put out in years gone by, Brazil were the pinnacle of what you would expect. And not just Brazil. I mean, South America in general, specifically Brazil. Now, obviously, unlike the previous World Cups, unlike you could argue the ones from 2022, 18, 2014, 2010, 2006, 2002, and the list goes on and on. Unlike the ones that came before, this has to be one of the instances where Brazil are actually going into a World Cup where they're not the favorites. Like they are not the actual favorites in this one. And for some people, they would argue that this is a blessing in disguise because now they get to be the dark horses in this tournament. Assuming we still have a World Cup by June, July, because like I said before, um, there's a lot of doubts with how things are going, especially with ticket prices and also with the political stuff, which I will try not to get into for this. Anyway, so yeah, if you're Brazilian and you're watching this, it's just the honest truth. You guys have an advantage in the sense that you don't have to rely on the usual pressure of being the favorites anymore. which I feel could work in Brazil's advantage in this World Cup. Um, and this is something I've noticed that not a lot of people haven't actually taken the time to speak on and really delve into in terms of like identifying what could potentially be pivotal for Brazil. Um, Now, in order for this to happen, certain factors have to come into effect, which leads me on to Neymar. Now, let's be honest here. It's obvious by now that Neymar's past his prime. For him to even be called up at this stage by Ancelotti into not the actual World Cup squad yet, but just a friendly match or friendly matches to prepare and to have a list of players in which Ancelotti could actually sit back on and now draw up the final squad, which he's going to take into this World Cup. This actually is sort of like gives Neymar the opportunity to prove that he still has like something left in him to get Brazil across the finish line here. Now, what am I trying to say? In the past months since he went back to Brazil to Santos, Neymar hasn't had it easy in terms of injuries, obviously. Then you've got the situation where Santos, the football club, had this relegation battle thing going on too. So for him to actually get them past that hurdle of not being relegated, and for him to actually stay fit and stay focused enough for Ancelotti to get a sliver of hope of bringing him back into the national squad proves that there is something left in him when Neymar's actually focused to actually get the job done. Now, that's not to say that Brazil haven't actually got a good squad. They do. I mean, from the likes of younger talents like João Pedro, Esteval, and even Endrick now, who, fortunately for him, is slowly getting back his form at Olympique Lyon in the French league. So this thing that is happening right now with the Brazilian players actually building up form under the radar and slowly get into that um format to prepare for the World Cup individually puts them at an advantage that not a lot of people have actually looked into going into the coming months. For this to work, obviously, it requires Neymar to be in the equation as well. So I think the perfect example to use in this instance is Argentina. Obviously, you have Messi, who's an exceptional player, the greatest of all time to many. But for the longest time, Messi's issue had was actually regarding the fact that he couldn't actually do it alone. He actually needed the other players in the squad in Argentina to actually rally around him to get Argentina across the finish line to actually win the World Cup. And it always was a cloud over his head. That compares him to Maradona. For the longest time, Maradona had a World Cup, Messi didn't have a World Cup, and now finally Messi did have a World Cup. But in order for it to happen, Messi needed the collective squad of Argentina to get it done, and it happened. Now for Neymar, you could argue that even though he's now past his prime, he can still play a sort of like contributive role now to the squad, assuming that Ancelotti actually gets him in and decides to take him in. So, in that pattern, obviously, with that strategy, he's going to more or less be in a contributive role, whether that involves him coming off the bench in some games or just possibly playing some starting lineup games within the starting lineup, but more as a midfield type of role, natural number 10 in this case. For this to work, the others, the Viniciuses, the Endriks, the João Pedros, the Estevals, they all have to play in a form of format that actually suits his playing style as well, and also ensures that he doesn't get injured. Because in the critical moments, Neymar will give you, he will give you that outstanding performance that you need, especially in the dire moments of any game. So I want to believe that if he manages in the next few months to just stay fit and somehow just keep his form going into the next games, there is a possibility that this might be his last World Cup, which should actually put him in the same level in terms of World Cup appearances as a Pele. Now, obviously, Pele's legacy exceeds Neymar's legacy by Pele's legacy exceeds Neymar's legacy by miles compared in comparison. But right now, Brazil just need a figure to rally around to get this done. Assuming it happens. But then again, I would place more of my hopes on France or on Argentina or Spain or even Portugal in this case. Because Portugal will have a really good chance of winning this. But then again, Brazil could also be the dark horse in this to shock the world and actually win it, especially with a manager like Ancelotti now. But the missing link here that needs to put all the pieces in place is Neymar. So if that happens, then it is open. Like Brazil do could have a chance, a slim chance, given the fact that Neymar now is older, more injury prone, but it is still a chance.